Hello, welcome to Cognito, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to play Shatranj, the direct ancestor of chess. Now this game is actually how chess was played for about 1,000 years for the majority of its history, from Scandinavia to Africa, so it's an incredibly interesting and very different game from the chess that you probably know and love. And just a disclaimer, you should know how to play modern orthodox chess before learning Shatranj. This tutorial assumes that you know how to play. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first of all, you may notice a few things. The board is uncheckered, the pieces look very different, and there are different reasons for this. First of all, the board is traditionally uncheckered in this variant. For most of the chess variants all around the world, the board is uncheckered. Second of all, about the pieces. This game uses abstracted Islamic pieces from the high renaissance of the golden age of Islam, and at that point in time, the majority sect of Islam preached that you weren't allowed to depict images of living beings. So we have abstracted forms to keep chess within what was allowed during the religious practice of that time, so that chess could continue to thrive. And these conventional forms later developed into the pieces that we know and love today. For instance, the elephant with the two tusks was interpreted by the British as a bishop's mitre, so that became the bishop. The French thought it looked like a harlequin's cap. That's why even today, in France, even with our modern stance and pieces, which very clearly show a bishop's mitre, they call it le fou, or the jester. So, interesting stuff. Before I begin, I just need to briefly point out that this replica is available at the link in the description, and it is the best, most affordable, most historically accurate replica of a Shatranj set on the internet. It is very expensive, though. It is the most affordable, but it is still pretty expensive for what it is. But let's get on into the game. First of all, everything in Shatranj is exactly the same as chess from the get-go, except for a few exceptions. So let's go piece by piece. To begin, we have the king or Shah. There's nothing very special about this piece. It just moves exactly like the king in chess. So, and it captures, and the same check and checkmate rules apply. You're trying to get the opponent's king. Another way to win, however, in Shatranj is to completely take your opponent's army. And this is called checkmating the bare king. And you'll find that because of the nature of the game, this is the most often in conclusion to a game, just because of the weaker pieces. Second of all, we have the firzan, or advisor. Now, this piece would later develop into our Mad Queen, the most powerful piece on the chessboard. But right now, about 500 years ago, the piece was incredibly weak by our modern standards. It could move just one space diagonally. So a very, very weak piece indeed. So it's not going to be, it's a good supportive piece, but it's not going to be winning any games for you, like the queen would. Next up, we have the rook. The rook is the most powerful piece on the board, and it moves like your standard rook. You want to be careful about losing these. You want to protect them, and it's actually pronounced rook. And it's one word that actually remained throughout all the changes that were made by the European adoption of chess. They kept the word ruch, which is Persian for chariot, which later developed into rook as an Anglicization. So you can see it kind of looks like an abstracted chariot, and there's a lot of evidence behind this, but this would be the back part, and this would be the front part with the horses. I like to position them horizontally, and in most texts you'll see it horizontally, but some people say you should position it vertically if that interpretation, which seems to be correct, is true. It's up to you. Next up is the faras, or horseman, and he moves like a knight. He's probably the second most powerful piece on the board, and it moves like a knight. Just like a normal knight, it jumps in the normal way. So that's easy to get the hang of. You already know that. And next up is my favorite piece, the alfil, or elephant. Now this piece has a very strange move. It later develops into the bishop, but for right now, it's one of the weakest pieces on the board. It jumps, I know, exactly 2 spaces diagonally. No more, no less. So it can only reach 8 squares on the entire board. And no elephant ever comes into contact with any other elephant in the game. So the alfil, one of the strangest moves in the history of chess. Very un-elephant-like move, and there's been a lot of debate associated with how exactly it developed to be that way. And finally, the lowly foot soldier, or bidak. And it moves just like a pawn. It moves up, but it can only move one space forward. So the en passant rule is irrelevant, so it doesn't exist, and openings take a lot longer, as you can see. Because pawns need to move twice to get to their normal space in the center of the board. And pawns may only promote to Vierzans. So promotion is not a big deal because the Vierzan can only move one space diagonally. Now onto the setup. This is the setup for Shatranj. It goes king, or Shah, alfil, faras, and ruch, and then in front, like the bidaks. Every piece where you assume it would go, goes. However, there is one variant that you may or may not want to play with. In the Persian style, the pieces on the white side are actually exchanged so that the kings or the Shah never face each other. And something that it does that's very interesting is it actually allows the Irzan, the advisor, to attack and capture each other, whereas in the Arabic variant, where they're like this, they can't unless you promote one that happens to be on the same diagonal. And that's pretty interesting. You get to decide which opening you want to use. Also, if you're interested in opening theory, it's very different. This game is a lot slower because look how clunky the pieces are. You have to, really it takes a while to get an opening out and ready. And basically this allows you to set up the pieces however you want. But this is also why puzzles were much more popular in the day as Suli's puzzles, because he was a great Arabic master of Shatranj, but because the chess game was so slow, because of Shatranj, just weak pieces, puzzles were a lot more fun. And that's why card games later took over as the game of the nobility in the Renaissance before chess was reformed with our modern, far-reaching pieces. And the reason why it's not checkered is because the checkering only was an aid in visualization to help people visualize how the bishops and the queens would move diagonally. Originally it was ornamentation, but then they adopted it because it helped. And there's no far-shooting bishops or far-shooting queens, so you don't really need this. So I highly recommend you try out and play Shatranj. It's a lot of fun, and thank you so much for watching. Keep this chess variant alive. It's dying out. It used to be the most popular chess variant in the entire world, and now nobody knows about it or plays it, besides a few people. And if you're interested in more of these chess variants, be sure to subscribe, like, and share. So have a great day, and see you later.